Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku questioned what being a hero really means. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The smell of the UA infirmary was distinct. It wasn't just antiseptic and sterile cotton, it was the scent of accelerated cell division, of ozone, and of exhaustion so deep it felt like marrow settling into lead. Izuku Midoriya stared at the ceiling. The white tiles were counted, recounted, and categorized in his mind. 144. A perfect square. A logical, orderly structure. His right hand, however, was a chaotic mess of throbbing heat. Recovery girl, Chio Shizenji, sat in her swivel chair, the wheels squeaking softly against the linoleum. The sound was grating in the heavy silence. She was filling out paperwork, the scratch of her pen loud and aggressive. "You've done a number on yourself, boy," she muttered, not looking up. Again. Izuku shifted, wincing as the movement pulled at the newly knit muscle fibers in his arm. The surgery had been successful. The healing kiss had done its work, but the phantom sensation of bones shattering under the pressure of one for all remained, a ghostly echo of the sports festival's violence. "I'm sorry," Izuku whispered. His voice was raspy. "Don't apologize to me," Recovery Girl sighed, finally turning to look at him. Her eyes were tired, not the fatigue of a long shift, but the ancient weariness of someone who has spent decades patching up children who were too eager to throw themselves into the fire. "Apologize to your body. It's the only one you'll get. If you keep treating it like ammunition, you won't make it to graduation, let alone the top rankings." Izuku looked away, his gaze falling on his bandaged hand. The scars were ugly. Twisted, knotted flesh that would never quite look normal again. Todoroki. The name flashed in his mind. The ice, the fire, the overwhelming sorrow in the other boy's eyes. Izuku had lost the match. He had failed. He had gone out in the second round, blown out of the ring after destroying his own limbs to save someone who was technically his enemy. Did I save him? Izuku wondered. Or did I just force him to use his fire so the crowd would have a better show? "You're free to go once the floor bag is empty," Recovery Girl said, standing up and moving toward the door. "The festival is winding down. The medal ceremony is in an hour. I suggest you go home and sleep for a week. But knowing you, you'll be watching replays by midnight." She stepped out, leaving the door slightly ajar. Izuku lay there for a long time, watching the clear liquid drip, drip, drip into his vein. Each drop was a second of his life ticking away. He felt hollow. Usually, after a fight, even a loss, he felt a burning drive to do better. Plus ultra. But today, the adrenaline had washed away, leaving behind a residue of bitter cynicism he couldn't quite identify. He sat up, the room spinning slightly. He needed water. Pulling the 4-needle out, a bad habit he knew, he pressed the cotton ball to the puncture wound and taped it down. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. His shoes felt heavy. His uniform felt like a costume he hadn't quite earned the right to wear. He limped toward the door, intending to find a vending machine. The hallway outside was dim, the roar of the stadium muffled by thick concrete walls. It sounded like the ocean during a storm, a constant, rhythmic crashing of thousands of voices. As he turned the corner toward the faculty break room, he heard voices. Familiar voices. Izuku froze. His instinct to hide, honed by years of bullying, kicked in before his rational mind could catch up. He pressed his back against the wall, just outside the open break room door. "Absolute disaster for the insurance premiums," a deep, wooden voice groaned. "Kamui Woods." "Oh, hush," a female voice countered. "Empty, lady?" There was the sound of a soda can cracking open. "The ratings are through the roof. Did you see the analytics on the Bakugo kid? The villain demographic loves him. The aggression plays well in the overseas markets, too. American agencies are already asking for his contact info." Izuku's breath hitched. "Markets? Demographics? The Midoriya kid, though," a third voice chimed in. "Death arms. Liability. Pure liability. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Did you see his arm? That's not heroism. That's self-mutilation. It makes the parents nervous. If parents are nervous, merchandise sales drop. Nobody buys action figures of a kid who looks like he's in a torture porn. True, empty lady agreed, her voice muffled as if she were chewing. But the drama sells. The crying? The underdog story? It's good for a season or two. But for a long-term investment? Give me the icy hot kid, Todoroki. That's a legacy brand. Endeavor's kid? That's royalty. You can slap that face on a lunchbox and retire early. It's a shame, really, Kamui Wood said. The green one has heart. But heart doesn't pay the agency fees. Heart gets you killed, Death Arms grunted. Branding gets you paid. And let's be honest, we've got quotas to meet this quarter. If I don't get 3 high-profile takedowns by June, the commission is going to dock my funding again. Izuku slowly slid down the wall, his knees hitting the floor with a soft thud. He shouldn't be hearing this. He knew, intellectually, that pro-heroes were professionals. They had salaries, agencies, taxes. It was a job. He knew that. He had written notebooks full of analysis on their marketing strategies. But hearing it like this, hearing them strip the sports festival, this sacred event where dreams were supposed to be forged, down to insurance premiums and lunchbox sales, it felt like watching someone peel the skin off a beautiful painting to reveal the rot underneath. They aren't talking about saving people, Izuku realized, his hand gripping the fabric of his pants. They aren't talking about peace. They aren't even talking about who won or lost. They're talking about us like we're racehorses. Heart doesn't pay the agency fees. The words echoed in his skull, louder than the roar of the crowd outside. Izuku forced himself to stand. He didn't want water anymore. He wanted to leave. He wanted to get as far away from the pro-heroes as possible. The sun was setting by the time Izuku changed back into his school uniform and exited the main gates of UA. The sky was a bruised purple, bleeding into orange. The massive concrete structure of the stadium loomed behind him, casting a long, cold shadow over the departing crowds. The air was thick with the smell of fried food from the stalls, sweat, and the lingering electricity of thousands of quirks. Confetti littered the ground like dirty snow. Izuku kept his head down, pulling the collar of his gakuren up to hide his face. He didn't want to be recognized. He didn't want to hear the pity or the morbid curiosity. Did you see that explosion? Someone shouted nearby. Yeah. That Bakugo kid is a monster. I'd be scared to have him in my neighborhood. Who cares? It was awesome. It was like watching a movie. Izuku walked faster. The train station was packed. He squeezed into a carriage, pressed against the glass door. The reflection staring back at him was pale, with dark circles under the eyes. He looked like a ghost haunting the living. 2 salarymen stood near him, hanging onto the overhead straps. Did you catch the broadcast? One asked, scrolling through his phone. Parts of it. Saw Endeavor's kid win. Predictable. The government really goes all out on this, huh? Budgets are tight for infrastructure, the roads in Hosu are crumbling, but they have the yen to build a transforming concrete robot for high schoolers. Bread and circuses, my friend. Keeps the populace happy. Keeps us believing that we're safe. Are we safe? Villain attacks are up 15% this year. Sure, don't say that. Just watch the fireworks and clap for the heroes. Izuku closed his eyes. Bread and circuses. He remembered reading that term in history class. The Roman Empire used entertainment to distract the masses from poverty and corruption. Was that what the sports festival was? Was he just a gladiator in a coliseum, breaking his bones so the salarymen on the train wouldn't think about the crumbling roads in Hosu? Stop it, he told himself. You're just tired. You're cynical because you lost. All might is the symbol of peace. This system, it holds society together. But the seed had been planted. And the soil in Izuku's mind, tilled by years of quirkless isolation and observation, was fertile ground for doubt. He got off 2 stops early. He couldn't handle the crushing weight of the crowd anymore. He needed to walk. He needed the rhythm of his feet on the pavement to organize the chaos in his head. The district here was quieter. Mizudafu was a sprawling city, and while the area around Yui was gleaming and modern, the residential sectors were older. The streetlights flickered. Graffiti tagged the alleyway entrances. It was the part of the world that didn't make it onto the glossy brochures. Izuku walked, his heavy backpack thumping against his spine. What am I doing? he asked himself. I have one for all. I have the greatest power in the world. And yet, I felt more helpless in that infirmary listening to death arms than I did fighting a giant robot. A shout broke his reverie. Hey! Get back here! Izuku's head snapped up. The instinct was immediate. The pain in his body vanished, replaced by the electric jolt of duty. Down the block, a figure in a dark hoodie was sprinting, clutching a woman's handbag. Behind him, a woman in heels had fallen to the pavement, screaming, "Thief! Someone stop him!" Izuku's legs moved before his brain gave the order. He dropped his bag and sprinted. Full cowling flickered through his system, just 5%, enough to close the distance without shattering his legs. Green lightning arced around him, but he wasn't the closest one. From a convenience store entrance, a man stepped out. He looked unremarkable, balding, wearing a beige cardigan and slacks, holding a plastic bag of groceries. He saw the thief running toward him. Most people would step aside. Most people would look down and wait for a hero. The man in the cardigan didn't. He dropped his groceries. Eggs shattered on the pavement. As the thief tried to shove past him, the man moved with surprising fluidity. He stepped in, grabbed the thief's wrist, used the thief's momentum against him, and slammed the offender into the brick wall of the store. It was a judo throw. Clean, efficient, and brutal. "Let go!" The thief screamed, his free hand glowing with a weak heat quirk. "Not today, son," the man grunted. He twisted the thief's arm behind his back, pinning him against the bricks. "You don't steal from Mrs. Tanaka. She's on a fixed income." Izuku skidded to a halt 10 meters away, the lightning fading from his skin. He watched, wide-eyed. The man wasn't a hero. He didn't have a costume. He didn't have a flashy quirk. He was just a guy. A guy who knew his neighbor. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming. But before the police arrived, a blur of red and gold descended from the sky. "Have no fear. The cavalry is here." A pro-hero landed with a heavy thud, cracking the pavement slightly. It was Gilded Spark, a hero Izuku recognized from the lower tier of the top 100. His costume was shiny, covered in LED lights that strobed even in the twilight. Gilded Spark looked at the scene, the thief already pinned, the civilian holding him. The hero frowned. He looked at the gathering crowd, at the teenagers pulling out their smartphones to record. He realized he had missed the action shot. "Step aside, citizen." Gilded Spark boomed, using his hero voice. He shoved the man in the cardigan, hard. The man stumbled back, nearly tripping over his broken eggs. "Hey, watch it!" Gilded Spark grabbed the already subdued thief by the collar, lifting him effortlessly. He turned to the crowd, flashing a blindingly white smile, posing so the LEDs on his chest formed his logo. "Another criminal apprehended by the Gilded Spark Agency. The streets are safe once more," the crowd cheered. Phones flashed. Izuku stood frozen. He watched the man in the cardigan. The man was rubbing his shoulder where the hero had shoved him. He looked down at his ruined groceries. No one was looking at him. No one was cheering for him. The police arrived a moment later. 2 officers jogged up to Gilded Spark, taking the thief into custody. Then, one of the officers turned to the man in the cardigan. "Sir," the officer said, pulling out a notepad. "Did you engage the suspect with a quirk?" The man looked tired. "I don't have a quirk, officer. It was just judo." "Did you use physical force to detain him?" "He was running. I stopped him." "That is vigilantism, sir," the officer said, his voice cold. "Public use of force is restricted to licensed professionals. You could have caused collateral damage. You could have escalated the situation." "He stole a purse," the man argued, pointing at the victim. "That doesn't give you the right to take the law into your own hands. You're lucky the pro-hero arrived to stabilize the situation. I'm going to have to issue you a citation for disturbing the peace and unlicensed intervention." Izuku felt a wave of nausea roll over him. A citation? The man had saved the day. Gilded Spark had arrived late, shoved the savior, posed for photos, and was now signing autographs for a group of high school girls. The actual hero was being fined for his trouble. Izuku looked at Gilded Spark. The hero was laughing, basking in the attention. The gold of his costume glittered under the streetlights. It was fake. It was all so fake. Izuku walked over to the groceries scattered on the ground. He knelt and started picking up the unbroken items: a can of coffee, a bag of rice. The man in the cardigan looked down at him. "Leave it, kid. It's trash now." "You were amazing," Izuku said, his voice quiet. He didn't look up. He handed the man the can of coffee. "You were faster than him." The man took the can. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him, and saw the UA uniform. He saw the bandages on Izuku's hand. "UA, huh?" The man scoffed, but there was no malice in it, only a weary resignation. "Going to be one of them? A big shot in a cape?" Izuku hesitated. Yesterday, the answer would have been an enthusiastic yes. I want to save people," Izuku said. The man stared at Gilded Spark, who was currently doing a pose for a selfie. "Saving people is easy, kid. Helping people, that's the hard part. The system doesn't pay you to help. It pays you to win." The man turned and walked away, clutching his citation in one hand and his single can of coffee in the other. He disappeared into the shadows of the alley, a hero that society had just spat out. Izuku stood there for a long time. He looked at his own hand, the hand that All Might had grasped when he passed on the torch. The hand that was scarred and broken. The system pays you to win. He thought of Bakugo, muzzled and chained to the podium, furious not because he hadn't won, but because he hadn't won his way. He thought of Todoroki, bred like a prize horse. He thought of Uraraka, fighting until she vomited because her parents needed money. And he thought of All Might. The symbol. The pillar that held the sky up. If the sky needed a pillar to keep from crushing everyone, maybe the sky was too heavy. Or maybe the people had forgotten how to stand up. Izuku grabbed his backpack. He didn't run home. He walked. He felt older. The city lights didn't look like stars anymore. They looked like bars of a cage. "Izuku? Is that you?" Inko Midoriya was in the kitchen when he opened the door. The smell of katsudon filled the apartment, his favorite. A comfort meal. She rushed into the hallway, her eyes red from crying. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. She was smaller than he remembered. Or maybe he was just growing. "I saw the match," she sobbed. "Oh, Izuku. Your hand, your poor hand. I couldn't watch. I turned the TV off." "Why do you have to hurt yourself like that?" "Why?" Izuku hugged her back, resting his chin on her head. Her worry was a physical weight, warm and suffocating. "I'm okay, Mom," he said automatically. "The script. It's what I have to do to be a hero." Inko pulled back, holding his face in her hands. She looked into his eyes, searching for the boy who used to run around in an All Might onesie. "Is it?" she asked softly. "Is being a hero worth destroying yourself?" "Honey, you have nothing to prove. You're a good boy. You've always been a good boy. You don't need to break your bones to show the world that." Izuku couldn't answer. He ate dinner in silence. The katsudon was delicious, but it tasted like ash. Inko tried to make small talk, but the air was thick with things unsaid. She was terrified of his dream, and for the first time, Izuku wasn't sure if his dream was protecting her or hurting her. After dinner, he went to his room. It was a shrine. Posters of All Might covered every inch of wallpaper. Action figures lined the shelves. Limited edition merchandise, signed prints, replica costumes. Usually, entering this room felt like entering a church. It was a place of worship and inspiration. Tonight, it felt like a mausoleum. Izuku sat at his desk. The glow of the desk lamp illuminated the stack of notebooks. Hero analysis for the future. There were 13 of them now. Detailed notes on quirks, weaknesses, special moves, costume designs. He reached for number 13. He opened it to the page he had started on. Empty lady. Quirk, gigantification. Excellent for crowd control and large-scale disaster relief. Weakness, narrow streets and collateral damage. He remembered the conversation in the infirmary. Drama cells. Liability. He picked up his pen. His hand was trembling. He drew a line through the entry. A thick black slash. He turned the page. Kamui Woods. Excellent mobility. Weakness, fire. He crossed it out. He flipped through the book, faster and faster. He saw the entries for his classmates. Ida. Uraraka. Bakugo. He stopped on All Might's page. The drawing of the smiling hero, the word symbol of peace written in bold, block letters. Izuku stared at the smile. It was the smile that had saved him. It was the smile that told the world I am here. But Gran Torino had told him about All Might's fear. Recovery Girl had told him about the surgeries. And today, the man in the cardigan had shown him that you don't need a smile or a license to be a hero, you just need to care. And for caring, the man was punished. If the system punishes the good and rewards the profitable, then what is a hero? Izuku closed notebook number 13. He pushed it aside. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a fresh notebook. It was plain black. No All Might stickers. No hero analysis title. He opened the first page. The paper was stark white, waiting. He pressed the pen to the paper. The ink bled slightly. He didn't write about quirks. He didn't write about super moves. He wrote a title in the center of the page. What is a hero for? Underneath, he began to write. The words poured out of him, not as the fanboy who worshipped the ground the pros walked on, but as the boy who had seen the cracks in the golden statue. Today I saw a hero ignore a crime to pose for a photo. Today I saw a good man punished for saving a neighbor. Today I heard my teachers discuss my broken bones as an insurance liability. We are taught that the license is the difference between a hero and a vigilante. But the license is just a permit to participate in the economy of saving people. It's a business transaction. All Might saves everyone. He is the pillar. But if one man has to hold up the entire world, then the world is built wrong. And if we are just training to be the next pillars, are we saving society, or are we just enabling it to remain weak? I want to save people with a smile. But if the smile is a mask to hide the fact that we are dying, then who are we saving? Izuku stopped. He looked at his hand again. The scarring was deep. It would never fade. He looked up at the poster of All Might on his wall. The hero was pointing at the viewer. I want you. I don't know if I can be you anymore, Izuku whispered to the poster. The silence of the room swallowed his confession. I don't think I want to be. He didn't want to be a symbol. Symbols were hollow. Symbols were things people projected their hopes onto so they didn't have to carry them themselves. He wanted to be something else. He didn't have a name for it yet. But as he sat there in the dim light of his room, surrounded by the merchandise of a commercialized dream, Izuku Midoriya felt the first true spark of one for all ignite within him. It wasn't a power of strength. It was a power of change. He closed the black notebook. The cover felt cool under his fingers. Tomorrow, he would go back to UA. He would smile. He would train. He would pretend to be the Deku everyone expected. But behind the green eyes, a new question was burning, brighter and hotter than any flame endeavor could produce. What does it mean to be a good person in a world of heroes? And for the first time in his life, Izuku feared the answer. The train rattled against the tracks, a rhythmic, metallic heartbeat that vibrated through the soles of Izuku Midoriya's red sneakers. Outside the window, the urban sprawl of Muzurifu gave way to the grayer, denser, and less manicured districts of Yamanashi. Izuku sat with his knees pulled close together, his backpack hugged to his chest. Inside that bag lay the new, black notebook. It felt heavier than the others. The last few days at UA had been a blur of performative excitement. The class had buzzed with the thrill of nominations. Midnight had preened on the podium, talking about hero names as if they were pop star personas. Your name is your brand, she had said, cracking her whip. It's how the public will perceive you. It's what you'll sell. Izuku had watched his classmates. Aoyama wanted to be the shining hero. Mina, the alien queen, then Pinky. They were choosing mascots. They were choosing the images that would look best on merchandise. Even Bakugo, with his Violet Lord explosion murder, was just playing into the demographic Empty Lady had mentioned, the thrill seekers, the lovers of power. When it was Izuku's turn, he had walked to the podium and flipped his whiteboard. Deku, are you sure, Midoriya? The class had asked. That's an insult. It fits, Izuku had replied, his voice steady but lacking its usual nervous wobble. It's a name for someone who is nobody. And you have to be nobody before you can help anybody. They had taken it as humility. Only Uraraka had looked at him with a furrowed brow, sensing the shift in tone. Now, on the train, Izuka looked at the scenery degrading. The shining glass towers of the city center were gone, replaced by apartment blocks with peeling paint and rust-stained balconies. This was the part of Japan that All Might's smile didn't quite reach. He checked his phone. No messages from Ida. That silence was a screaming alarm. Tenya Ida, the class representative, the man of rules and order, had chosen an agency in Hosa's city, the city where his brother, Ingenium, had been crippled by the hero killer. He's going for revenge, Izuka thought, staring at his dark reflection in the train window. And the sad part is, the Hero Association let him. They approved the internship because the Ingenium name brings prestige to Manuel's normal agency. They didn't check his mental state. They just checked the paperwork. The train screeched to a halt. Kofu Station. Kofu Station. Izuka stood up. It was time to meet the man who had taught the symbol of peace how to fight. The address led him to a building that looked like it should have been condemned a decade ago. It was a nondescript, beige structure with water stains running down the facade like tear tracks. The neighborhood was quiet, not the peaceful quiet of the suburbs, but the heavy, muffled quiet of a place where people kept their heads down. Izuka climbed the stairs to the second floor. Door 206. He hesitated. His hand hovered over the rusted doorbell. He remembered All Might's trembling when he spoke of this man. Gran Torino. A veteran. A ghost. Izuka knocked. No answer. The door creaked open slightly under the force of his knock. It was unlocked. Hello? I'm Izuka Midoriya. I'm here for the internship. Silence. Izuka stepped inside. The room was dim, smelling of old paper and stale grease. And there, in the middle of the floor, lay a small, elderly man in a white cape and yellow suit, face down in a pool of red liquid. Izuka froze. His first instinct, the old instinct, was to scream. Blood! He's dead! A villain attack! But the new voice in his head, the one that had been writing in the black notebook, was louder. It was analytical. Cold. Izuka looked at the body. No signs of struggle. The door had been unlocked, but not forced. The blood was viscous, too thick. It smelled like tomatoes. There was a plate of sausages on the table nearby. Izuka didn't scream. He didn't rush over to check for a pulse. He walked over to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. He placed his bag on the floor. If you're dead, Izuka said calmly, looking at the prone figure, then I suppose I should call the police. But if you just tripped carrying your lunch, the sausages are getting cold. The corpse twitched. Slowly, the old man lifted his head. He licked the ketchup off his chin. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, peered out from behind a mask of feigned senility. You're not a screamer, Gran Torino grunted, pushing himself up. Toshinori would have screamed. He was a twitchy one. All Might is anxious, Izuka said. He carries too much. It makes him jumpy. Gran Torino paused. He wiped his face with his sleeve and hopped onto a chair with a speed that defied his appearance. He stared at the boy. This wasn't the trembling, starry-eyed successor he had seen on the sports festival broadcast. The kid sitting across from him was still, hands folded on the table, eyes uncomfortably direct. So, Gran Torino said, scratching his beard. You're the ninth. The one who breaks his bones to show off. I don't do it to show off, Izuka corrected. I do it because the power is too much for a human vessel. And because I haven't been taught how to regulate it properly. Humph, blaming the teacher? If the student fails, the teacher has failed. Isn't that the rule? Izuka asked. But I'm not here to blame All Might. I'm here to learn how to stop breaking. Because if I break, I can't save anyone. Gran Torino narrowed his eyes. You've got a chip on your shoulder, kid. Where'd that come from? You won the moral victory at the festival, didn't you? Save the ice boy. I won nothing, Izuka said, looking at his scarred hand. I participated in a spectacle. Now, are you going to teach me, or are we going to talk about sausages? Gran Torino let out a short, barking laugh. Cheeky. I like that. Toshinori was always so respectful it made me sick. All right, kid. Put on your costume. Let's see if you can back up that attitude. The sparring was less of a fight and more of a pinball game. Gran Torino was a blur. He bounced off the walls, the ceiling, the floor, using the jets of air from his feet to become a human bullet. Izuku couldn't track him. Every time he tried to wind up a smash, a yellow boot kicked him in the back of the head, or the ribs, or the knees. Too slow! Torino shouted, ricocheting off the ceiling lamp. You're looking for me with your eyes. You're thinking about where I am, not where I will be. Izuku gritted his teeth. He stood in the center of the room, panting. He was trying to summon one for all, but the fear of breaking his bones was a mental block. You're stiff. Torino landed on the microwave, crouching like a gargoyle. You treat the power like a loaded gun you're afraid to fire. It's not a gun, boy. It's you. It's your blood. It's your breath. Izuku stared at the microwave. A frozen taiyaki sat inside on a plate. A gun. Izuku muttered. No. It's a container. What? The power, Izuku said, his eyes unfocusing. Society treats quirks like weapons. Like things to be holstered until a license permits you to draw. But one for all, it's everywhere in me. I'm not a holster, I'm the bullet. He closed his eyes. He stopped trying to pull the power into his arm. He let it flow. He imagined the energy as water, filling a bathtub. Not overflowing. Just filling it. Every vein. Every capillary. Green sparks began to dance across his entire body. Not just his arm. His legs. His torso. His neck. Full cowling. Izuku opened his eyes. The green lightning crackled softly, a constant hum rather than a violent surge. Oh? Gran Torino raised an eyebrow. You figured that out faster than I expected. It's about distribution, Izuku said. He flexed his hand. No pain. If I spread the load, the structure holds. Good logic. Now can you move? Torino launched himself. This time, Izuku didn't just stand there. He jumped. He wasn't as fast as Torino, but he was fast enough to react. He leaped up the wall, kicking off the plaster, and twisted in the air. He didn't aim to hit Torino. He aimed to intercept his path. They clashed in midair, a brief tangle of limbs, before landing on opposite sides of the room. Gran Torino looked impressed. Not bad. You call that move something? Full cowling, Izuku said. He powered down, the lightning fading. It allows me to use 5% constantly without injury. 5%, huh? It's a start. Gran Torino hopped down. Toshinori took 3 weeks to figure that out. He was all muscle and no brain. You think too much. But in this case it helped. The old hero walked to the kitchenette to check on his taiyaki. You've got the basics. We'll refine the movement tomorrow. Tonight we eat. And you tell me what's really eating you. The apartment was dark, lit only by the streetlights filtering through the grime of the window. They sat at the small table, eating the fish-shaped cakes. You asked me earlier, Gran Torino started, his voice losing the gravelly edge of the drill sergeant, becoming softer, older. Why I retired. Why I live here. Izuku looked around the sparse room. You were Nana Shimura's friend. Torino stiffened. I was. All Might told me she died saving him. He said she was a true hero. The truest. Izuku traced the pattern of the wood grain on the table. Did she die for peace, Torino-san? Of course she did, Torino said sharply. She died holding back all for one. The embodiment of evil. She gave her life so Toshinori could escape, grow strong, and eventually defeat him. That is the definition of a sacrifice for peace. Is it? Izuku looked up. His green eyes were piercing in the gloom. Or did she die because the world demanded a sacrifice? Did she die because the system relied on a single lineage of power to clean up a mess that society refused to deal with? Gran Torino slammed his hand on the table. Watch your mouth, boy. You're speaking of things you don't understand. That woman was a saint. She believed in the symbol. She believed that people needed someone to look up to, someone to smile and say it's going to be okay. And look where that got us, Izuku said, his voice rising, not in anger, but in desperation. Look at All Might now. He's a skeleton. He's dying. And when he falls, and he will fall soon, What happens to the people who forgot how to be brave because they spent 40 years relying on him? Gran Torino fell silent. The air in the room was heavy. You think the symbol is a mistake? Torino whispered. I think a table with one leg is a bad design, Izuku retorted. Nana Shimura died. You went into hiding. All Might is breaking apart. Who's next? Me? Am I supposed to die in 10 years so the people can feel safe for another 20? Is that the cycle? It's not about dying. Torino snapped. It's about duty. It's about holding back the chaos. Before the symbol of peace, do you know what it was like? It was anarchy. Villains ruled the streets. The strong preyed on the weak. Nana and Toshinori built a dam to hold back that flood. A dam eventually breaks if you don't drain the water, Izuku countered. You stopped the villains, yes. But you didn't fix the society that creates them. You just pushed them into the shadows and put a shiny gold sticker over the cracks. Izuku leaned forward. Why did you really get your license, Torino-san? You weren't a pro, were you? Not really. Gran Torino sighed, slouching in his chair. He looked very old suddenly. No. I wasn't. I got my license solely so I could legally use my quirk to help Nana fight All for One. The laws, they were restrictive, even back then. If we fought without licenses, the police would have hunted us down alongside the villains. Exactly, Izuku said softly. You had to ask permission to save the world. You had to fill out a form to be a good person. Doesn't that seem wrong to you? It's the law, kid. Without law, there is no order. Is it order? Izuku asked. Or is it just control? The Hero Public Safety Commission, they don't care about saving people. They care about managing quirks. They monetize it. They rank us. They turn saving lives into a sport. And because of that, we have heroes like the ones at the sports festival who care more about their ratings than the students in the infirmary. Gran Torino stared at the boy. He saw a shadow behind Izuku, not the shadow of All Might, and not even the shadow of All for One. It was something else. It was the shadow of Stain, of the vigilantes of the pre-quirk era, of every disillusioned soul who realized the game was rigged. You're walking a dangerous line, Midoriya, Torino warned. You talk like a vigilante. You talk like someone who thinks they are above the rules. No, Izuku shook his head. I don't think I'm above them. I think the rules are beneath us. People are better than this. But the system treats them like children who need a superhero to cross the street. He stood up. I'm going for a walk, Izuku said. I need to clear my head. I'll be back for training in the morning. Take your phone, Torino grunted, not looking at him. And don't engage anyone. You're still a student. I know, Izuku said. I'm just a student. The night air in Kofu was cool. Izuku walked with his hands in his pockets, his hood up. He found himself wandering toward the commercial district. Even at night, giant screens played advertisements. Endeavor Fire Insurance. Protect your home. Uwabami's new perfume line. Smell like a hero. All Might commemorative plates. Limited supply. Izuku stopped in front of a bookstore. In the window, there was a display of history books. He went inside. The chime above the door alerted a bored clerk who didn't look up from his manga. Izuku walked to the history section. He pulled down a book titled The Age of Chaos, Pre-Quirk Society, and the Transition. He flipped through the pages. He read about the early days of quirks. Before the commission. Before the license. There were stories of neighbors banding together to protect their streets. Communities forming packs. It was chaotic, yes. Violent sometimes. But there was a sense of shared responsibility. Then came the regulations. The government, terrified of losing its monopoly on violence, instituted the hero license. They took the strongest, gave them badges, and told everyone else, stand down, leave it to the professionals. They disarmed the public's morality, Izuku whispered to himself. He put the book back. He pulled out his phone and searched for vigilantes. Most of the results were news articles about criminals. Illegal quirk users apprehended. Vigilante disrupts police operation. But deeper in the forums, on the dark mode pages where people spoke freely, the tone was different. Crawler saved my cat when the pros were too busy with the villain downtown. Knuckleduster cleaned up this alleyway when the police wouldn't come here. Stain is crazy, but is he wrong? The pros only go where the cameras are. Stain. The name made Izuku's stomach turn. The hero killer. He was in Hosu. Killing pros. Stain's ideology was twisted. He believed that killing fake heroes would purify the society. He was a murderer. But as Izuku walked out of the bookstore and back onto the street, he couldn't help but think, Stain is a symptom. Just like Shigaraki is a symptom. Just like I am. Stain saw the rot and tried to cut it out with a blade. The Commission saw the rot and painted over it with gold. All Might saw the rot and tried to cover it with his own body. What do I do? Izuku wondered. He looked at his hand again. The green lightning of full cowling flickered under his skin, faint and controlled. I can't kill. And I can't ignore it. And I can't just be a human shield. He had to be something new. His phone buzzed. It wasn't Ida. It was a news alert. Hero killer strikes again in HOSU. Pro-hero native attacked. Hosu. It was only a short train ride away from Kofu. Ida was in Hosu. Izuku stood on the street corner. Gran Torino had told him to stay put. The law said he couldn't act without a license. The school said he was just a student, but his friend was walking into a trap set by a man who killed anyone he deemed false. And Ida, blinded by revenge, was the definition of what Stain hated. Izuku didn't head back to the apartment. He turned toward the train station. Gran Torino said the license is a muzzle, Izuku thought. Tonight I take it off. He wasn't going to fight Stain. He wasn't arrogant enough to think he could beat a serial killer. But he was going to find Ida. He was going to save his friend from himself. And if that meant breaking the law, well, the law was broken long before Izuku got here. As he swiped his pass at the turnstile, Izuku felt a strange sense of calm. The anxiety was gone. The fanboy stutter was gone. He was entering the gilded cage of the hero world, but this time, he was bringing a wire cutter. Hosa's city was burning. It wasn't the clean, ceremonial fire of the sports festival torches, nor was it the controlled, industrial flame of Endeavor's hell flame. This was the chaotic, choking fire of disaster. Sirens wailed, weaving a discordant tapestry of panic against the backdrop of the night sky. Izuku Midoriya sprinted across the rooftops. The green lightning of full cowling arced around his body, casting long, jittery shadows against the ventilation units and water towers. Below him, the streets were a theater of war. Strange, bird-brained creatures, Nomu, were rampaging. Cars were overturned. Glass shattered. And amidst the chaos, pro-heroes were shouting, "Stay back, citizens! We have this under control. Look at me! I'm engaging the target. Get the cameras on the east side." Izuku heard them. Even over the roar of the flames and the screams of civilians, he heard the performative cadence of their voices. They were fighting, yes. They were risking their lives. But there was a rehearsed quality to it, a desperate need to be seen doing the saving. He didn't stop. He didn't look down to assist Manuel, or the others. His mission wasn't public order. It was private rescue. Ida. The name was a heavy stone in his gut. Tenya Ida, the class representative, the boy who chopped the air with his hands and spoke of rules like they were holy scripture. He had come to Hosa not to learn, but to hunt. Izuku checked his phone as he leaped over a gap between two office buildings. The GPS signal he'd received was stationary. It was deep in the commercial district, away from the main evacuation routes, away from the cameras. If you want to be a hero, you go to the light. If you want to be a killer, you go to the dark. Izuku skidded to a halt at the edge of a 4-story building. He looked down into the labyrinth of alleyways below. They were narrow fissures in the city's concrete flesh, unlit and filled with the refuse of the day. He dropped. He kicked off the wall to slow his descent, landing silently on a dumpster before hopping to the damp pavement. The noise of the riots was muffled here, replaced by a sinister, dripping silence, and the smell of blood. It was sharp and metallic, cutting through the scent of wet garbage. Izuku walked forward, his footsteps light. He turned a corner and saw them. The pro-hero native was slumped against a brick wall, his body limp, his eyes glazed with pain, and a few meters away, Tenya Ida lay on the ground. The engine pipes on his calves were dented. His helmet was knocked off, revealing a face twisted in a rictus of pure, unadulterated hatred. Standing over him was the shadow, Stain, the hero killer. He looked less like a man and more like a collection of blades held together by red cloth and malice. His scarf was tattered, fluttering in a wind that didn't exist down here. He held a katana, the tip hovering inches above Ida's neck. "You are weak," Stain rasped. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "You are not a hero. You are an impostor who wields power for his own selfish desires. You are cancer." "Shut up!" Ida screamed, tears streaming down his face. "You killed my brother! You hurt Ingenium! I will kill you!" "I will." Ingenium, Stain spat the name. He was weak too. He sought fame. He sought money. And you seek revenge. You are the furthest thing from a hero. Die. The blade descended. In the canon of Izuku's life, the life where he blindly worshipped the symbol, he would have screamed smash. He would have announced his presence with a thunderclap of air pressure, declaring his existence to the villain. But this Izuku was different. This Izuku had spent the last 2 days staring at the cracks in the world. He didn't scream. He moved. 5% focalling. He was a green blur. He didn't aim for Stain's face. He aimed for the space between the blade and the neck. Clang. Sparks showered the alleyway. Stain's eyes widened slightly. His katana had been stopped. Not by a fist, but by the reinforced sole of a red sneaker. Izuku had kicked the blade upward, parrying the strike with surgical precision. He used the momentum to backflip, landing in a crouch between the killer and his friend. Silence returned to the alley. "Midoriya." Ida choked out, his voice thick with shock and shame. "What? Why are you?" Stain hopped back, creating distance. He sheathed the katana and drew a jagged dagger from his belt. He licked his lips, literally. His tongue was disturbingly long. "Another one?" Stain muttered. He tilted his head, assessing Izuku. "You have a good look in your eyes, boy. Not like this trash behind you. You didn't shout. You didn't pose." Izuku slowly stood up. He didn't take a fighting stance immediately. He kept his hands open, near his waist. "I'm not here to pose," Izuku said quietly. "I'm here to pick up a classmate who got lost." "Lost?" Stain chuckled darkly. "He isn't lost. He found exactly what he was looking for. He came to hunt me. And in doing so, he revealed his true nature. He cares nothing for the people I might hurt. He cares only for his own pride and his family's name. That is not heroism. That is vanity. Midoriya, don't listen to him." Ida yelled from the ground, trying to move his arms, but his body wouldn't obey. "He's a villain. He's evil. Kill him." Izuku didn't look back at Ida. He kept his eyes locked on Stain. "You're right," Izuku said. The words hung in the air, heavier than the humidity. Ida froze. "What?" Even Stain blinked, his bloodlust momentarily paused by confusion. "Right, you're right about him," Izuku continued, his voice steady, though his heart was hammering against his ribs. "Ida came here for revenge. He abandoned his internship duties. He walked past the chaos in the city center where people needed help, just to find you. He prioritized his own vendetta over the safety of the public. By the definition of the law, and maybe even morality, he failed today." "Izuku!" Ida's cry was a sound of betrayal, but Izuku took a step forward, the green lightning crackling louder. "Just because your diagnosis is correct, Stain, doesn't mean your cure is right." Stain narrowed his eyes. "Explain." "You call them fake," Izuku said. "You call them cancer. You think that by killing the ones who care about money or fame, you'll purify the system. You think fear will make them better." "It will," Stain growled. "It is the only thing that works. Words do not change society. Blood does." "No," Izuku shook his head. "Blood just makes more blood. Look at Ida. You hurt his brother, so he came to kill you. If you kill him, who comes for you next? His friends? His parents? You aren't fixing society, Stain. You're just traumatizing it. You're creating a world where people are good because they are terrified of being murdered by a lunatic in an alley. That's not a golden age. That's a dictatorship." Stain stared at the boy. The madness in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a razor-sharp focus. This wasn't the usual platitude-spewing child from UA. This boy wasn't screaming about justice. He was debating efficacy. You admit the system is broken, Stain said, his voice lowering. You admit they are fakes. I admit that the current definition of a hero is flawed, Izuku said. I admit that commercializing rescue has made people greedy. I admit that my friend here is acting like a villain right now. Izuku clenched his fists, raising them. But he is my friend, Izuku said, his voice hardening into steel. And he is human. Humans make mistakes. Humans fall. A real hero doesn't kill them for falling. A real hero helps them stand back up. And I won't let you execute him for being human. Stain's grin returned, wider this time. It wasn't a smile of mockery. It was a smile of anticipation. Interesting, Stain whispered. You see the truth, but you still choose to shield the garbage. You have the eyes of a seeker, but the hands of a protector. Very well. Let us test the weight of your words. Stain moved. He was fast. Faster than the camera footage had shown. He closed the gap in a blink, the dagger slashing toward Izuku's shoulder. Izuku dodged, ducking under the blade. He aimed a smash at Stain's gut. Detroit smash. 5%. Stain twisted his body midair, an unnatural contortion, and the punch grazed his ribs. In the same motion, Stain lashed out with a second blade hidden in his boot. SHKKT. A thin line of red opened up on Izuku's arm. Too linear! Stain shouted, landing on the wall and bouncing off. You move like a robot. You think too much. Izuku gritted his teeth. He's right. I'm analyzing his moves, but he fights on instinct. Stain lunged again. Izuku tried to backflip, but his body suddenly seized. His legs locked. His arms fell to his sides. He crashed to the pavement, face first. Midoriya! Ida screamed. Izuku struggled, but his muscles were stone. Paralysis? Is it the cut? The blood? Stain landed softly beside him. He didn't strike immediately. He licked the blood from his blade. Type B, Stain muttered. Unfortunate. You won't be down for long. But long enough. He walked over to Ida. You see, boy? Stain said to Izuku, gesturing with his knife toward the prostrate class representative. You spoke well. But words without power are empty. You cannot save the fake without the strength to defeat the real. Don't. Izuku gritted out, fighting the paralysis with every ounce of will. Don't touch him. He is the problem, Stain said, raising the katana over Ida again. He pollutes the title of hero. He's just a kid. Izuku yelled, his face pressed against the dirty concrete. He's a kid who lost his brother. If you kill him, you're not a revolutionary, Stain. You're just a bully picking on the grieving. Stain paused. The accusation seemed to sting him. A bully? Stain turned back to Izuku. I am purging the world to make room for real heroes. Heroes like All Might. All Might smiles to save people's hearts. Izuku shouted. You kill people to save, what? An idea? An ideology? You're sacrificing real lives for a fantasy. That makes you just as fake as the ones doing it for money. Stain's eyes widened. He stepped away from Ida, walking back toward Izuku. He crouched down, bringing his face inches from Izuku's. You understand the burden, Stain whispered. You understand that All Might is the only true one. But you think I am wrong for clearing the brush? I think you're wrong because you enjoy it, Izuku spat. Stain recoiled as if slapped. Before he could respond, the temperature in the alleyway dropped 50 degrees. Frost crept rapidly along the walls. A massive wave of ice surged through the entrance, forcing Stain to leap backward to avoid being encased. Midoriya! Shoto Todoroki stood at the mouth of the alley, his left side blazing with fire, his right side exhaling cold mist. He held his phone in one hand. You sent a location with no context, Todoroki said calmly, though his eyes were intense. I figured you were in trouble. I didn't expect the hero killer, Todoroki. Izuku gasped. Don't let him lick your blood. That's how he paralyzes you, Todoroki nodded. He unleashed a torrent of fire, forcing Stain to retreat further down the alley. Ida, Todoroki said, glancing at the fallen student. You should be able to stand. Why are you on the ground? I can't. Ida wept. I pursued him. I tried. Stand up. Todoroki barked, uncharacteristically harsh. Look at what you've done. Your friend is bleeding on the ground because you wanted to play Avenger. Is this who you are, Tenya Ida? Stain laughed. He bounced between the walls, dodging the fire and ice with acrobatic ease. More children? The harvest is plentiful tonight. Stain threw 2 knives. One grazed Todoroki's cheek. The other aimed for Native, the paralyzed pro. Todoroki had to choose. He walled off Native with ice, leaving himself open. Stain closed in. You have good power, Stain growled, his sword clashing against an ice wall. But you rely on your quirk too much. You are sloppy. He was about to slice Todoroki's arm when a green blur slammed into his side. Izuku was up. The paralysis had worn off. I'm not done debating, Izuku yelled, driving a knee into Stain's stomach. Stain grunted, sliding back. He looked at Izuku, wiping blood from his lip. You recovered quickly. Type B? Todoroki, cover my back, Izuku ordered. Keep your distance. He's a close-range fighter. Understood, Todoroki said. Midoriya, what is the plan? Do we wait for the pros? The pros aren't coming, Izuku said, staring at Stain. They're busy with the Noma. They're busy with the cameras. It's just us, Stain repeated. He smiled. A genuine, terrifying smile. Good. Let us see if the seeds of the future are strong enough to survive the winter. The fight that followed was a blur of violence. It wasn't like the sports festival. There were no boundaries. No referee. Stain fought dirty. He threw debris. He used the narrow walls to his advantage. He targeted their eyes. Izuku fought with a desperation he had never felt before. He wasn't fighting to win a medal. He was fighting to keep Ida breathing, but he was also fighting a war of words. You say society is corrupt, Izuku yelled, dodging a swipe that would have disemboweled him. So why don't you try to fix it? Why don't you inspire people instead of terrifying them? Inspiration is weak, Stain roared, kicking Izuku into a trash can. Only trauma creates change. That's a lie, Izuku rolled, springing off the wall. Trauma creates broken people. Like you. Like Ida. We don't need more broken people. Ida, watching from the ground, felt the words pierce him deeper than Stain's sword. Broken. He watched Izuku. His arm was bleeding. His costume was torn. He was terrified. Ida could see the trembling in Izuku's legs. But he was standing. He was standing between the monster and the fallen. He's not fighting for glory, Ida realized. He's not fighting for vengeance. He's fighting for me. Ida looked at his own hand. It was shaking. I wanted to be Ingenium. But Ingenium saved people. I just wanted to hurt someone. Ida whispered. I am a fake. Then become real, Todoroki shouted, blasting a wall of fire to keep Stain back. Stand up, Ida. If you want us to stop, then stand up and be the hero you claim to be. The engine on Ida's leg sputtered. It groaned. And then, with a roar of blue exhaust, it ignited. Ida forced his paralyzed body to move. He screamed, tearing through the mental block of the quirk's effect through sheer force of will, and the time limit expiring. Recipro. Burst. Ida launched himself. He didn't aim for Stain's head. He aimed for the sword arm. Stain saw him coming. Too late, false one. Stain prepared to impale Ida. Detroit. Smash. Izuku appeared from above. But he didn't hit Stain. He hit the ground in front of Stain, shattering the concrete. The floor upheaved. Stain lost his footing for a split second. That second was enough. Ida's kick connected with Stain's shoulder. There was a sickening crack. Stain's sword flew from his hand. Todoroki followed up instantly. Flash freeze heatwave. A massive explosion of rapidly cooling air blasted Stain into the wall of the building. He hit the bricks with a force that shook the fire escape. Stain crumpled. He slid down the wall, falling into a heap on the wet trash. Silence returned to the alley, broken only by the heavy breathing of the 3 students. Izuku stood panting, clutching his bleeding arm. He looked at Stain. The man was unconscious. Ida fell to his knees. He didn't cheer. He didn't look at his victory. He looked at the ground. I'm sorry, Ida sobbed. I'm so sorry. I was so blind. Izuku walked over. He didn't offer a platitude. He didn't say, it's okay. He put a hand on Ida's shoulder. You were wrong, Tenya. What you did today, it was wrong. You could have died. You could have gotten native died. Ida flinched, but Izuku said softly. You stood up at the end. That part was real. They tied Stain up with heavy rope found in the alley and stripped him of his weapons. Drag him out to the street was a somber procession. Native, who had recovered enough to walk, limped beside them. When they emerged from the darkness of the alley into the main street, the contrast was blinding. The fires were dying down. The Noma had been subdued. Gran Torino landed in front of them, looking furious. Kid! He kicked Izuku in the face. Not hard, but enough to sting. I told you to stay on the train. Do you have any idea? He stopped. He saw the bundle of ropes behind them. He saw the unconscious form of the hero killer. Gran Torino's eyes went wide. You took him down? Before Izuku could answer, other pros arrived. Is that Stain? The kids got him? Hey! Get a photo of this. Endeavor's agency is going to claim this, right? The sun is here. The pros circled. They weren't checking the boys for injuries first. They were checking the perimeter. They were calling their agencies. They were securing the asset. Izuku felt the nausea return. We're bleeding, he thought. Ida is traumatized. Native is hurt. And they're discussing press releases. Suddenly, a screech filled the air. A winged Nomu, one that had evaded capture, swooped down. It wasn't attacking a hero. It was fleeing, and it saw an easy hostage. It grabbed Izuku. Talons dug into his shoulders. He was lifted into the air. Midoriya! Uraraka's voice? No, just a hallucination. It was Todoroki screaming. The pros panicked. Don't shoot. It has a hostage. Someone get a flight hero. Izuku struggled, but he was exhausted. The pain in his arm flared. He looked down at the street. The heroes looked small. Helpless. Paralyzed by procedure. Then, the bundle of ropes on the ground moved. A tongue flicked out. A hidden knife cut the cords. Stain moved faster than thought. He didn't run away. He didn't attack the pros. He leaped. With leg strength that defied biology, Stain launched himself into the air. He intercepted the Nomu 10 meters off the ground. He grabbed the creature's head. With a brutal, efficient motion, he drove a dagger into the exposed brain of the monster. The Nomu went limp. They fell together. Stain grabbed Izuku midair, shielding the boy with his own body as they crashed back onto the pavement. Dust billowed. The pros stood frozen. Endeavor arrived at that moment, his flames raging. Hero killer! Endeavor shouted, raising a fist of fire. Wait! The shout came from the dust cloud. Slowly, the dust settled. Stain was standing. His mask had fallen off, revealing a face missing its nose, scarred and terrifying. He held the unconscious Noma down with one foot. Izuku lay on the ground next to him, safe. Stain wasn't looking at Endeavor. He wasn't looking at the pros. He was looking at the camera crews that had just arrived. Or maybe he was looking at the world itself. An aura of pure, concentrated bloodlust exploded from him. It was a physical pressure. Heroes, seasoned veterans, took a step back, their hands shaking. Endeavor's flames flickered. Fakes. Stain whispered. The word carried across the street. You call yourselves heroes? Stain's voice rose, cracking with intensity. You care only for your image. You let the city burn while you pose. The only one. He pointed a shaking, blood-stained finger. Not at all might. He pointed down, at Izuku Midoriya. The pros gasped. The only one worth saving. Stain growled. Is him. He is the only one who sees the rot, and still tries to lift the flower. Stain turned his gaze to Izuku. The boy was staring up at him, wide-eyed. Stain leaned down. The aura intensified. The pressure was suffocating. People fell to their knees. Gran Torino gripped his cape, unable to move. Stain brought his face close to Izuku's ear. You see it now, don't you? Stain whispered. It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. The society is a corpse painted in gold, Stain rasped. Do not let them gild you, boy. Do not let them turn you into a statue to be sold. Be the flesh. Be the blood. Or burn it all down. Stain's eyes rolled back. The knife dropped from his hand. Clattered on the asphalt. He stood there for one more second, a monument to conviction, before his body gave out. He collapsed, unconscious, standing upright for a moment before falling over like a chopped tree. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence gripped Hosa's city. Endeavor lowered his hand. The fire on his face was dim. He looked at the unconscious killer, then at the green-haired boy sitting in the growing pool of blood. Izuku touched his ear where Stain had whispered. The words burned hotter than any fire. Do not let them gild you. The paramedics finally rushed in. The spell broke. The noise returned. Secure the villain. Get the kids to the hospital. Did you get that on tape? Izuku let the paramedics help him up. He felt numb. He looked at Ida, who was being loaded onto a stretcher, weeping silently. He looked at Todoroki, who was staring at his own hand, deep in thought, and he looked at the pro-heroes. They were high-fiving. They were giving statements to the press. The situation is under control thanks to the prompt response of the Endeavor Agency. Lies, Izuku thought. He looked at the unconscious form of Stain being shackled in heavy iron chains. He was a monster, Izuku told himself. He killed people. He was wrong, but as he watched the heroes preen for the cameras while the city smoked around them, Izuku couldn't help but feel that Stain's diagnosis, the disease of the society, was the only honest thing he had seen all night. Izuku touched the notebook in his back pocket. He had a lot to write. The hospital room was white. An aggressive, blinding white that seemed designed to bleach the memories of the night before. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a low-frequency hum that burrowed into Izuku Midoriya's skull, vibrating against the headache that had settled behind his eyes. He lay in the center bed. To his right, Shoto Todoroki sat upright, reading a book with one hand, his other arm in a sling. To his left, Tenya Ida stared at the ceiling, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow, his arms heavily bandaged. It was morning. The sun was trying to push through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the linoleum floor. It looked like a prison bar pattern. Izuku looked at his own arms. They were wrapped in thick gauze. His leg, which had taken the brunt of a landing, was elevated. Physically, he was healing. Recovery Girl hadn't visited yet, but the hospital's quirk specialists had done a preliminary acceleration on the cuts. The bone bruises would take time, but the mental bruising, that was something else. Izuku closed his eyes, but the darkness didn't bring sleep. It brought the image of Stain standing over them. It brought the sensation of the bloodlust that had paralyzed veteran heroes. It brought the whisper that still echoed in his ear like a tinnitus of truth. Do not let them gild you. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Gran Torino walked in. He was shorter than the door handle, yet he filled the room with a presence that made the air feel heavier. He wasn't wearing his costume anymore. He was in civilian clothes, a simple shirt and trousers, but he still walked with the bouncy, restless energy of a coiled spring. Behind him came Manuel, the normal hero. Ida's mentor. He looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped, his eyes unable to meet Ida's gaze, and behind them, a tall man with the head of a beagle. Kenji Tsurigami, the chief of the Hosa City Police Force. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from sterile boredom to suffocating tension. So, Gran Torino said, hopping onto an empty visitor's stool. You're all awake. Good. Because we have a problem. Izuku sat up slowly, wincing as his ribs protested. He looked at the police chief. Tsurigami was dressed in a pristine uniform, his badge gleaming under the harsh lights. He looked like the embodiment of the system, orderly, clean, and imposing. Greetings, Tsurigami said. His voice was deep and rumbling, punctuated by a habitual, canine woof at the end of his sentences. I am the chief of police here in Hosu. I assume you understand why I am here, woof? Ida sat up, his face pale. Yes, sir. It is because of what we did. What you did, Tsurigami corrected, though his tone wasn't angry yet. It was factual. Let us review the events. Last night, the hero killer, Stain, was apprehended. He suffered multiple bone fractures, severe burns, and blunt force trauma. He is currently in critical condition under heavy guard in the ICU. Tsurigami clasped his hands behind his back. Normally, the capture of a villain of this caliber, a serial killer who has claimed the lives or careers of over 40 pro heroes, would be cause for commendation. The heroes responsible would be celebrated. They would receive bonuses, rank increases, and media tours. He paused, letting the silence stretch. However, Tsurigami continued, his eyes narrowing slightly. You three are not heroes. You are students. You possess provisional licenses that allow you to act only under direct supervision in emergency situations. Last night, you engaged a villain without supervision. You used your quirks to inflict significant bodily harm. In the eyes of the law, this is not heroism. It is vigilantism. It is assault. The word assault hung in the air. Todoroki closed his book. His face was impassive, but his eyes were cold. We saved a pro-hero. Native would be dead if we hadn't intervened. Ida would be dead. Midoriya would be dead. The outcome does not justify the method in a society governed by laws, Tsurigami countered smoothly. If everyone used their power whenever they felt it was right, society would collapse into chaos. That is the very definition of the pre-quirk anarchy we fought to escape, Woof. Izuku felt a tightening in his chest. It wasn't fear. It was the same cynicism that had seized him in the infirmary after the sports festival. Here it is, Izuku thought. The script. The bureaucratic tape that holds the world together. So, Tsurigami said, looking at each of them in turn. Here is the situation. The incident has been contained. The media knows Stain was captured, but they do not yet know the specifics. If this goes public as it stands, that 3 students defeated the hero killer while their mentors lost control of them, you will be expelled. You will face criminal charges, and your mentors, Gran Torino and Manuel, will have their licenses revoked for negligence. Ida gasped. He looked at Manuel. Manuel-san. I didn't mean to. Manuel looked at the floor. It's the rules, Tenya. I'm responsible for you. However, Tsurigami raised a finger. There is a second option. An alternative interpretation of events. Izuku knew what was coming. He could see the shape of the lie before it was spoken. We can report that the hero killer was apprehended by Endeavor, Tsurigami said. He arrived on the scene shortly after the fight concluded. His flames were seen in the area. We can claim that you 3 were caught in the crossfire, injured by the villain, and that Endeavor stepped in to save you and subdue the target, Woof. Todoroki flinched. The name Endeavor was a spark in a powder keg. If we do this, Tsurigami explained, the credit goes to Endeavor. The glory goes to him. But in exchange, your involvement is scrubbed from the official record. No expulsion. No criminal charges. No revoked licenses. You get to continue your education. But you will receive no recognition. You will be the unsung heroes. Tsurigami looked at them, expecting relief. He expected gratitude. This was a generous offer, after all. A get-out-of-jail-free card. It is a bitter pill, Tsurigami said, softening his tone slightly. But it is necessary to preserve the integrity of the hero institution. The public must trust that the system works. They must trust that pros handle villains, not children. Silence. In another timeline, Izuku Midoriya would have bowed. He would have thanked the chief for his leniency. He would have said, as long as everyone is safe, that's enough. But this Izuku looked at the chief's shiny badge. He looked at the perfect crease in his trousers. Why? The word was quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. Tsurigami blinked. Excuse me? Izuku swung his legs over the side of the bed. He ignored the pain in his ribs. He stood up, his hospital gown fluttering slightly. He gripped the metal rail of the bed frame, his knuckles white. Why is the lie necessary for the system to work? Izuku asked. His voice wasn't trembling. It was dangerously calm. Gran Torino stiffened. Kids, sit down. No, Izuku said, looking at the old man, then back to the chief. I want to understand. You said the public must trust that the system works. But the system didn't work last night. Native was paralyzed. Manuel was busy. Gran Torino was delayed. The pros failed to locate Stain for months. We succeeded. It was a fluke, Tsurigami said, his ears twitching. You were lucky. Maybe, Izuku conceded. But we saved lives. And now you're saying that for the world to feel safe, they have to believe a lie? They have to believe that Endeavor, the number 2 hero, a man who cares more about power than people, saved the day? It is about order, Midoriya-kun, Tsurigami said, his voice hardening. The law is absolute. Is it? Izuku stepped forward. Or is it just convenient? Midoriya! Manuel warned. Think about it, Izuku said, his green eyes burning with an intensity that made the chief take a subtle step back. If you tell the truth, the public realizes that students did what pros couldn't. That scares them. It makes the pros look weak. So to protect the brand of the heroes, you're willing to falsify a police report. You're willing to give credit to a man who wasn't there. Izuku pointed at Todoroki. You want to give the credit to his father? To the man who treats his children like products? You want to bolster his rankings? Is that justice, Chief? Or is that marketing? Watch your tone, boy, Tsurigami growled, the dog-like growl becoming literal. I am offering you a lifeline. Do not mistake my kindness for weakness. The law exists to prevent vigilante chaos. If we validate your actions, every kid with a quirk will think they can jump into an alleyway and play hero. People will die. People did die. Izuku shouted. Stain killed them. While the pros followed the rules and waited for paperwork. While the pros patrolled the bright streets for cameras, Stain was in the dark killing people because the law was too slow to catch him. The room was deadly silent. Izuku was breathing hard. He felt lightheaded. Stain was a monster, Izuku whispered. But he was right about one thing. The system is obsessed with the facade. You care more about the image of safety than safety itself. Tsurigami stared at the boy. For a moment, the chief looked unsure. He saw something in Izuku's eyes, not rebellion, but a deep, sorrowful disappointment. So, Tsurigami said quietly. Are you refusing the offer? Are you choosing expulsion? Izuku looked at Ida. Ida was trembling, terrified. Being a hero was his family's legacy. Expulsion would destroy him. He looked at Todoroki. Todoroki didn't care about the credit, but he needed Yui to escape his father's shadow. He looked at Gran Torino. The old man's eyes were unreadable, but there was a flicker of warning. Don't throw it all away, kid. Not yet. Izuku closed his eyes. He let out a long, shaky breath. No, Izuku said, his voice hollow. We accept the offer. Tsurigami relaxed visibly. A wise decision. We will lie for you, Izuku continued, opening his eyes. They were dull now. We will let Endeavor take the glory. We will let the system keep its pristine image. He walked back to his bed and sat down heavily. But don't call it mercy, Chief, Izuku said, turning his back to the officer. And don't call it justice. Call it what it is. A transaction. You get your order. We get our licenses. And the truth gets buried. Tsurigami stood there for a moment longer. He adjusted his collar. Rest up, heroes. You have a long road ahead. He turned and left the room. Manuel followed, giving Ida a sad pat on the shoulder. Gran Torino remained for a moment. He looked at Izuku's back. You've got a sharp tongue, kid, Torino muttered. Be careful you don't cut your own throat with it. Better my throat than my conscience, Izuku replied without turning around. Gran Torino sighed and left, the door clicking shut behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Todoroki broke it first. You're right, he said. His voice was flat. My father taking credit for this. It makes me sick. It's logical, Ida said. His voice was small, fragile. Midoriya, you shouldn't have spoken to the chief like that. He is the law. We broke the rules. We deserve punishment. Izuku turned his head slowly to look at Ida. Do we? Izuku asked. Yes. Ida gripped his sheets. Tears began to fall onto his lap. I went there for revenge. I acted out of selfishness. Stain was right about me. I'm not a hero. I'm a fraud. And because of me, you two got hurt. If we are punished, it is only fair. You were wrong to seek revenge, Izuku agreed. He wasn't coddling Ida. You were reckless. You were selfish. Ida flinched with every word. But Izuku said, standing up again and limping over to Ida's bed. That doesn't mean the system is right to erase what happened. He stood over Ida. Tenya, Izuku said. You made a mistake. A human mistake. You were grieving your brother. But look at how the law handles it. They don't care about your grief. They don't care about your growth. They care about the paperwork. They care about making sure Endeavor looks good. It's not about Endeavor, Ida argued weakly. It's about maintaining public trust. Trust based on a lie isn't trust, Izuku snapped. It's delusion. He pointed to the window. Out there, people are cheering for Endeavor right now. They think he's a god because he caught the hero killer. But he didn't. We did. 3 scared teenagers. If the public knew that, they wouldn't panic. They might actually realize that they have the power to protect each other too. That they don't always need a pro to save them. Todoroki looked up, intrigued. You think the law is designed to keep people dependent? I think. Izuku paused, formulating the thought that had been brewing in his black notebook. I think the hero license is a monopoly. It concentrates the power to do good into the hands of a few, so they can sell it back to the masses. And when someone steps outside that monopoly, like the man in the cardigan, or like us, they have to crush it or cover it up. Because if people realize they can save themselves, they don't need to buy All Might merchandise anymore. Ida looked horrified. That's cynical, Midoriya. That's conspiracy. Is it? Izuku asked. Endeavor is the number 2 hero. He buys cases to boost his stats. We all know it. The chief just handed him another one on a silver platter. That's not a conspiracy, Ida. That's business. Izuku sat on the edge of Ida's bed. I'm not saying you were right to try and kill Stain, Izuku said softly. But don't let Tsurigami convince you that you're a villain for trying to fight. You stood up. You saved Native. You saved me. That part was real. Don't let them take that away from you just to balance their books. Ida wiped his eyes. I don't know what to think anymore. Everything I believed in, the rules, the rankings, it all feels fake? Izuku offered. Ida nodded slowly. Gilded. Todoroki leaned back in his chair, looking at the ceiling. Stain called us the future. He said we were the only ones worth saving. It's ironic. The villain saw our potential, while the police chief sees us as liabilities. That's because Stain judges the heart, Izuku said darkly. The chief judges the liability insurance. Evening came, turning the white room into a box of gray shadows. The boys had eaten a silent dinner of hospital gruel. The news was playing on the small TV mounted in the corner. Breaking news! Endeavor captures hero killer Stain! The headline flashed in bold red letters. Footage showed Endeavor standing amidst the wreckage, flames roaring, looking stern and powerful. The reporters were gushing. Once again, the number 2 hero proves that the streets are safe. Witnesses say the battle was fierce, but Endeavor's hell flame was too much for the villain. Izuku watched it with a stone face. Todoroki threw a small ball of paper at the screen. It bounced off Endeavor's face. He looked so proud, Todoroki muttered. He wasn't even there until the dust settled. The door opened again. This time, the figure entering had to duck significantly to fit through the frame. I am here. The voice was booming, but it cracked slightly at the end. All Might stood in the doorway. He was in his muscle form, wearing his yellow suit. He grinned, giving them a thumbs up. Young Midoriya. Young Ida. Young Todoroki. I heard the news. I came as fast as I could. I was so worried. He stepped in, closing the door. As soon as the latch clicked, poof, steam exploded. The muscle form vanished. In its place stood the skeletal, sunken-eyed figure of Tashinori Yagi. He coughed, blood trickling from his lip. All Might! Ida exclaimed. You shouldn't be here. Your time limit. I had to see you, All Might wheezed, wiping his mouth. He pulled up a chair, looking at the 3 of them with deep concern. Gran Torino told me what happened. He told me about the deal with the chief. He looked at Izuku. I am so glad you are safe. When I heard you faced the hero killer, my heart stopped. Izuku looked at his mentor. He loved this man. He really did. All Might was kind. He was self-sacrificing. He was a good person, but he was also the face of the lie. We're safe, Izuku said quietly. Physically, All Might sensed the tone. He shifted uncomfortably. I know it's frustrating. Giving the credit to Endeavor. It's not fair. But, it was the only way to protect your futures, was it? Izuku asked. All Might blinked. Of course. The law is strict regarding unlicensed quirk use. All Might, Izuku said, turning his body to fully face the skeleton man. Why does the law exist? To keep the peace, All Might answered automatically. To prevent chaos. And who defines peace? Izuku pressed. Is peace just the absence of fighting? Or is peace justice? They go hand in hand, my boy. Do they? Izuku pointed at the TV, where Endeavor was still being praised. That man abuses his family. Everyone in the industry knows it. You know it. Yet he is the number 2 hero. He is a pillar of peace. And now, the law is lying to the public to make him look even better. Is that justice? All Might looked down at his hands. Endeavor is complicated. But the public needs symbols. They need to believe that the pros are capable. So the symbol is more important than the truth, Izuku summarized. Sometimes. All Might sighed, a sound that seemed to rattle his ribs. Sometimes, yes. The world is fragile, Izuku. People are scared. If they lose faith in the heroes, society crumbles. We carry the burden so they don't have to. And that's why you smile? Izuku asked. Even when you're in pain? Even when you're dying? All Might looked up, startled. Yes. I smile to show them that it's okay. But it's not okay, Izuku said, his voice trembling now. You're not okay. Society isn't okay. And by smiling, by pretending everything is perfect, you're stopping people from fixing the problems. You're a painkiller, All Might. You numb the pain, but you don't cure the disease. All Might recoiled as if struck. A painkiller? Stain was a surgery, Izuku said. A brutal, bloody, infected surgery. But he was trying to cut out the rot. You're just hiding the rot under a smile. Midoriya! Ida interjected, shocked. That's too harsh. All Might has given everything for us. I know. Izuku stood up, tears finally spilling over. I know he has. Look at him. He gave his stomach. He gave his lungs. He's giving his life. And for what? So people can sit on the train and pretend nothing is wrong? So Chief Tsurigami can file his reports neatly? Izuku walked over to All Might. He reached out and gently touched the hero's bony arm. You're killing yourself for them, All Might, Izuku whispered. And they don't even know it. They treat you like a god, but they let you bleed. And the moment you fall, they won't know how to stand. All Might looked into Izuku's eyes. He saw the admiration was still there, but the blind worship was gone. In its place was pity. And anger. All Might stammered. I did what I thought was right. I wanted to create a world where people could live smiling. You created a world where people are dependent on your smile, Izuku corrected. And when you're gone, the crying will be that much louder. Izuku stepped back. I will accept the chief's deal, Izuku said. I will keep the secret of One for All. But I won't do it your way, All Might. I won't be a pillar that holds up a lie. I'm going to find a way to make the building stand on its own. All Might sat there, silenced. He felt suddenly very small. For decades, he had been the unshakable symbol. But this boy, his successor, had just pointed out the cracks in his foundation that he had been trying to ignore. I see, All Might whispered. You have grown, young Midoriya. Faster than I anticipated. I had to, Izuku said, looking at his bandaged hand. Because the world isn't as pretty as your comics made it look. Later that night, the hospital was quiet again. Ida was asleep, the emotional exhaustion finally taking him. Todoroki was staring out the window at the city lights. Izuku sat with his notebook, the black one. He wrote about Tsurigami. He wrote about the dog of the state. He wrote about the concept of the convenient truth. The law is a wall, he wrote. It keeps the wind out, but it also keeps the light out. Heroes are the guards on the wall. But who watches the guards? Endeavor took the credit. The system worked. The stocks for his agency will go up. merchandise sales will rise. The commission is happy. But we know, Ida knows that revenge is poison. Todoroki knows that power doesn't make you a father. I know that a license is just a permit to perform. Izuku looked at the entry he had made about Stain. Stain was wrong to kill. But he wasn't wrong to question. Izuku closed the book. He reached under his bed and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through the news feeds. The comments section on the Endeavor articles were full of praise. Endeavor is a beast. Stain got what he deserved. Pros are untouchable. And then, buried deep in the forum, a single comment caught his eye. My cousin works at the hospital. She said Endeavor didn't have a scratch on him, but 3 kids were brought in covered in blood. Just saying, the comment had 0 likes. It was already flagged as unverified rumor. Izuku stared at it. A small smile touched his lips. It wasn't All Might's smile. It wasn't Stain's grin. It was a small, sad, knowing smile. The cracks are there, Izuku whispered to the dark room. If you look close enough. He turned off his phone. Tomorrow, they would be discharged. Tomorrow, they would go back to Yae, back to the classroom, back to the training, back to the path of the hero. But Izuku knew he wasn't walking the same path anymore. He was walking parallel to it, in the shadows, watching, judging, and waiting for the moment when the wall would need more than a smile to hold it up. He lay back, staring at the ceiling tiles. 144. Perfect order. Just like a cage.